This was not a disagreement, this was a warning. It began with a single alteration on a ceremonial seating chart inside Windsor Castle. One tiny adjustment that palace aides reportedly tried to bury before dawn. But by midday, whispers had already spread through the ancient corridors of the Order of the Garter procession. Queen Camilla's name had allegedly been moved, then quietly removed altogether. What started as a minor protocol discrepancy soon exploded into one of the most chilling royal power struggles since the sun-drenched coronation of 2023. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The first signs of trouble emerged shortly after sunrise. Senior palace officials were allegedly seen entering a restricted administrative suite inside Windsor Castle nearly 3 hours earlier than scheduled. According to palace security logs and ceremonial planning movements, the atmosphere that morning was unusually tense. Staff members who normally handled the Order of the Garter preparations with almost mechanical precision were reportedly rushing between corridors carrying revised ceremony folders, updated carriage assignments, and amended chapel entrance schedules. What initially appeared to be routine last-minute adjustments soon began to feel far more sinister. Insiders whisper that several names on the procession order had been quietly shifted overnight, but one alteration allegedly stood above all others. Queen Camilla's ceremonial placement had reportedly been downgraded without explanation. And within palace circles, that kind of adjustment is never accidental. Sources close to royal administrative staff claim Prince William had already held a private strategy meeting the evening before with Princess Anne and a small circle of trusted constitutional advisors. The discussion, according to whispers circulating through Windsor's inner corridors, centered on what one insider allegedly described as future sovereign optics. That phrase alone reportedly sent shockwaves through sections of the household loyal to Camilla, because within the monarchy, appearances are never merely appearances. Every carriage position, every chapel entrance, every standing arrangement inside St. George's Chapel carries symbolic weight. And if reports are accurate, William fully understood the message such a change would send. What made the situation even more unsettling was the silence surrounding Catherine, Princess of Wales. Royal correspondents noted that she remained unusually restrained throughout the preparations, avoiding the warm public ease that typically defines her ceremonial appearances. Some believe she was attempting to avoid inflaming tensions already growing behind closed palace doors. Others whispered that her silence itself was a sign that the conflict had become far more dangerous than the public realized. Because according to palace insiders, disagreements between William and Camilla had reportedly intensified for months, driven by competing visions of influence inside a monarchy already strained by King Charles's ongoing health crisis since early 2024. Staff members were explicitly instructed not to discuss changes involving ceremonial positioning or chapel entry order. That level of secrecy immediately fueled speculation among veteran royal watchers. Several correspondents reportedly observed unusual movements among equerries and ceremonial officials before the procession even began, with aides repeatedly checking revised documents moments before arrival sequences were finalized. It was the kind of nervous palace choreography, usually associated with constitutional emergencies or unexpected succession developments. And then came the rumor that truly electrified royal circles. Reports began circulating that William had allegedly invoked a little-discussed internal protocol connected to future sovereign authority, a procedural doctrine believed to grant the heir apparent increased influence over ceremonial symbolism during periods of royal instability. Whether that protocol formally exists remains unclear. Palace officials, as expected, refused to comment. But the whispers alone were enough to transform an already tense atmosphere into something far more explosive. Because if William had truly begun exercising future monarch authority while King Charles remained on the throne, it would represent a chilling sign that the balance of power inside the House of Windsor was already beginning to shift. And for Camilla's allies, the implications were deeply alarming. Royal watchers later described the Queen Consort appearing visibly tense during private arrivals near St. George's Chapel, her usual confidence reportedly replaced by a colder, more guarded demeanor. Some interpreted it as frustration. Others saw something closer to realization. However, within the context of royal history, the real significance was never simply about one procession placement. The monarchy has always communicated through symbols, and insiders claim William's alleged maneuver was designed to send a message far beyond the walls of Windsor Castle. This was not being framed as a personal dispute or a passing family disagreement. According to various palace administrative whispers, it was the opening move in a much larger battle over influence, legacy, hierarchy, and ultimately the future direction of the crown itself. The old guard surrounding Princess Anne reportedly viewed the monarchy as a sacred trust that could not survive divided authority forever. And with Charles increasingly weakened, those tensions had allegedly reached a point where symbolic action became unavoidable. But the shocking procession change was only the surface of the crisis, because behind palace walls, reports suggest William had already begun preparing something far more devastating. For centuries, the Order of the Garter procession has symbolized unity at the very heart of the monarchy, but insiders now claim this year's ceremony became something entirely different. A silent battlefield. Every step, every placement, every missing gesture reportedly carried a message. And according to palace administrative whispers, Prince William intended that message to be unmistakable. The ancient ceremony has survived wars, abdications, scandals, and constitutional crises stretching back hundreds of years. Founded in the 14th century and wrapped in layers of sacred royal tradition, the Order of the Garter has long represented more than pageantry. It is considered by many royal historians to be one of the final visible symbols of continuity inside an institution built entirely on symbolism. Every detail matters. Every movement is deliberate. And that is precisely why insiders reportedly became alarmed when unusual adjustments began surfacing behind the scenes only days before the procession. According to various interpretations of palace administrative activity, senior planners were allegedly coordinating with an almost chilling level of precision, quietly yielding to altering ceremonial logistics without the normal collaborative process that traditionally defines such events. One palace source later described the atmosphere as icy coordination, a phrase that quickly spread among royal commentators already sensing deeper instability inside the House of Windsor. Reports suggest Prince William had begun viewing the entire ceremony through a very different lens than previous generations. With King Charles continuing to battle health difficulties since early 2024, insiders whisper that the Prince of Wales increasingly saw public ceremonies not merely as traditions to preserve, but as symbolic tests of future royal authority. The monarchy, according to those close to palace operations, had entered a dangerous transition period where appearances alone could shape public perceptions of control. And within that fragile atmosphere, every ceremonial role suddenly carried enormous political weight, particularly Camilla's. For months, Camilla's allies reportedly expected her to maintain the same level of visibility she enjoyed during the powerful early phase of Charles's reign following the coronation of 2023. At that moment, her position inside the institution appeared untouchable. She had completed a transformation few once believed possible, evolving from one of the monarchy's most controversial figures into a crowned queen standing at the center of royal life. But according to palace insiders, that confidence allegedly began colliding with a colder and more disciplined vision emerging from William's camp. a vision increasingly focused on what insiders called streamlining the future monarchy. That phrase carried enormous implications, because within royal circles, streamlining rarely refers only to schedules or staffing. It means reducing competing power centers, tightening influence, clarifying hierarchy. And according to various administrative whispers circulating through Windsor, William had become deeply focused on shaping a future public image centered almost entirely around the Wales family and the old guard surrounding Princess Anne. Reports suggest Anne herself appeared unusually authoritative throughout the procession preparations, reinforcing speculation that something far larger than ceremonial planning was unfolding. Royal observers reportedly noticed senior aides deferring to her with striking urgency during last-minute coordination discussions. Some insiders even began describing the atmosphere as the quiet formation of a new internal alliance. Whispers surrounding a so-called heirs accord soon intensified. Though never publicly acknowledged, commentators allegedly began connecting the dots between William, Catherine, Anne, and Prince Edward, four royals increasingly viewed as guardians of institutional continuity during a period of uncertainty. The idea itself reportedly unsettled sections of Clarence's house loyal to Camilla, who feared the emergence of a parallel power structure operating behind the scenes while Charles remained weakened. And those fears only deepened once the procession began. Because according to palace observers, several key adjustments appeared specifically designed to reduce Camilla's visibility during some of the ceremony's most symbolically important moments. To the public, the differences seemed subtle. A slightly altered placement here, a revised entrance sequence there. Nothing dramatic enough to trigger immediate outrage. But palace insiders reportedly recognized the deeper meaning instantly. Within royal protocol, visibility is influence, position is power, and reducing ceremonial prominence inside one of the monarchy's oldest sacred traditions sends a message no insider could possibly misunderstand. Comparisons quickly emerged between Camilla's commanding coronation-era visibility and the far more restrained positioning now allegedly imposed upon her. For some commentators, the contrast felt almost surgical, a calculated demonstration of shifting hierarchy disguised beneath velvet tradition and polite royal silence. However, within the context of the monarchy's internal struggles, the real significance reportedly had nothing to do with ceremony alone. Because behind the ancient rituals and carefully controlled appearances, growing fears were already spreading through palace corridors about something much more dangerous, who still truly controlled access to the crown itself. Behind the polished smiles and centuries-old rituals, insiders whisper that Windsor had already become divided into rival camps long before the procession began. One faction reportedly rallied around continuity, discipline, and the future reign of William. The other, according to various interpretations of palace dynamics, centered on Camilla's expanding domestic influence. And by early 2026, those tensions were allegedly reaching a breaking point. What made the situation particularly explosive was the growing belief among senior royal insiders that the conflict was no longer confined to personality clashes or occasional disagreements over palace etiquette. Reports suggest the divisions had evolved into something far more dangerous, a silent institutional struggle over who would ultimately shape the monarchy's next era. According to palace administrative streams and whispers circulating through both Windsor Castle and Clarence House, disagreements were allegedly intensifying over staffing decisions, ceremonial authority, future succession optics, and even the subtle mechanisms through which influence flowed behind closed doors. To the outside world, the monarchy still projected stability. But internally, insiders claimed the atmosphere had become increasingly strained, almost suffocating, as rival networks quietly expanded their reach. Camilla, according to various royal commentators, had reportedly continued strengthening ties with longtime loyalists connected to Clarence's house operations. Some insiders interpreted those efforts as entirely understandable for a queen attempting to secure stability during a difficult chapter of Charles's reign. Others, however, allegedly viewed the growing network around her as something more complicated, a parallel structure of influence slowly embedding itself deeper into royal operations. Palace whispers suggest concerns began emerging among senior traditionalists who feared that personal loyalties were starting to blur institutional boundaries that Queen Elizabeth II had spent decades protecting with ruthless discipline. That comparison to Elizabeth reportedly became central to the growing divide. Throughout her reign, the late queen was known for maintaining an almost icy separation between personal relationships and the sacred machinery of monarchy itself. Duty came first, always. Insiders now whisper that William increasingly embraced that same philosophy as tensions escalated around him. Sources close to palace staff claim he became deeply protective not only of Catherine, but of the entire Wales household, especially Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. According to reports, William allegedly viewed the growing instability surrounding internal palace influence as a direct threat to the long-term security of the future monarchy his children would inherit. At the same time, Princess Anne reportedly emerged as one of the most uncompromising voices inside the institution. Palace insiders claimed she privately warned senior aides about what she allegedly described as blurred lines between monarchy and personal networks. That phrase reportedly spread rapidly among the old guard, because within royal operations, even the suggestion of blurred lines carries chilling implications. It hints at weakened hierarchy, compromised discipline, and the erosion of the rigid institutional order that has historically protected the crown during periods of crisis. According to those familiar with palace dynamics, Anne had little patience for emotional politics or factional maneuvering. Reports suggest she increasingly aligned herself with William's belief that the monarchy needed to be fortified before Charles's condition created deeper uncertainty. Meanwhile, Catherine reportedly remained almost entirely removed from public involvement in the growing tensions. Yet insiders whisper that her silence concealed quiet but unwavering support for William's long-term restructuring vision. Palace observers allegedly noticed her maintaining careful distance from disputes while continuing to reinforce unity within the Wales household itself. That restraint reportedly strengthened William's position significantly, because unlike previous royal conflicts driven by public confrontation, this struggle was unfolding through silence, protocol, hierarchy, and strategic positioning. The absence of open warfare only made the atmosphere more unsettling. According to palace administrative streams, disputes reportedly began surfacing over guest approvals, patronage appearances, ceremonial placements, and even access to certain advisory discussions connected to future royal planning. Royal insiders whisper that William viewed several behind-the-scenes influence structures as fundamentally incompatible with the monarchy's future direction. To him, according to various interpretations circulating through palace circles, the institution could not survive if informal loyalties became more powerful than constitutional hierarchy itself. And as those tensions deepened, King Charles allegedly found himself trapped between two worlds, emotionally loyal to Camilla, yet increasingly pressured by the guardians of institutional continuity surrounding William and Anne. Sources close to palace staff claim the king appeared exhausted by the constant balancing act. Physically weakened and emotionally strained, Charles reportedly attempted to mediate between competing factions while desperately trying to preserve unity. But insiders whisper that by the time preparations for the Order of the Garter began, the fractures had already become impossible to fully conceal. The ceremony, once intended to symbolize continuity and sacred royal tradition, allegedly became the first public moment where internal tensions could no longer remain hidden beneath ceremonial elegance and controlled smiles. To ordinary observers, the atmosphere merely felt colder. To palace insiders, however, it reportedly signaled something far more historic: the beginning of an open institutional struggle over the monarchy's future chain of authority. But what truly stunned royal insiders was not the disagreement itself. It was the protocol weapon William allegedly chose to use next. Palace insiders now whisper about something they call the Iron Procession Protocol, an alleged internal strategy quietly activated by Prince William and backed by the old guard surrounding Princess Anne. If true, it represented far more than ceremonial reshuffling. It was reportedly a calculated demonstration of future sovereign authority, while King Charles remained physically weakened. According to various interpretations circulating through royal administrative circles, the strategy had allegedly been developing for weeks before the order of the Garter procession ever began. Reports suggest William privately consulted constitutional advisors, ceremonial planners, and trusted institutional figures in a series of unusually discreet meetings held between Windsor Castle and Kensington Palace. The discussions, insiders claim, focused on one central question: how could the monarchy project discipline continuity during a period of growing uncertainty surrounding King Charles's health? That question alone reportedly transformed what should have been a routine ceremonial preparation into something far more strategic. Palace whispers suggest William no longer viewed symbolism as secondary to governance. To him, symbols were governance, and if the monarchy appeared divided or unstable in public, then the institution itself risked weakening from within. Princess Anne allegedly became one of the most important enforcers behind the scenes. Sources familiar with palace dynamics claim her decades of institutional experience made her uniquely capable of navigating royal protocol without triggering open constitutional confrontation. According to insiders, she understood precisely how power moved inside the monarchy, not through loud declarations, but through invisible adjustments hidden inside procedure, ceremony, and hierarchy. Reports suggest she worked closely with ceremonial officials overseeing procession logistics, quietly reinforcing what palace insiders later described as a discipline-first approach to royal appearances. The atmosphere reportedly became so tightly controlled that even senior aides were only given partial information regarding final ceremonial positioning until hours before the event. Then came the adjustments that allegedly stunned sections of Clarence's house loyal to Camilla. Sources claim several ceremonial privileges tied to her visibility during the procession were subtly reduced, reassigned, or quietly repositioned. None of the changes were dramatic enough to provoke immediate public outrage. That, according to insiders, was precisely the point. This was not designed to look like rebellion. It was designed to look inevitable. Palace commentators later described the strategy as bureaucratic warfare wrapped in velvet and tradition, a phrase that rapidly spread among royal observers, attempting to understand what had truly happened inside Windsor that day. Because within the monarchy, the removal of visibility can be more devastating than public confrontation itself. What reportedly made the situation especially shocking was the belief among some Clarence House allies that Camilla's position had become permanently secure after the coronation of 2023. At that moment, her transformation appeared complete. She had survived decades of scrutiny, hostility, and institutional resistance to stand beside Charles as queen. Many loyalists allegedly believed that status placed her beyond internal challenge. But according to palace whispers, William's strategy demonstrated something chillingly different: that future sovereigns could still quietly reshape ceremonial power structures long before a formal transition of the crown ever occurred. Royal commentators allegedly began interpreting the procession not as an isolated disagreement, but as a warning regarding the monarchy's future chain of command. Reports suggest Prince Edward also supported efforts to reinforce strict ceremonial hierarchy during this period, particularly as concerns intensified regarding institutional discipline and succession optics. Though Edward remained publicly silent, insiders whisper that his loyalty to the old guard surrounding Anne and William had become increasingly important behind palace walls. Together, according to various interpretations, they represented a faction deeply committed to restoring what they viewed as the monarchy's traditional operational boundaries. William reportedly framed the entire strategy around protecting what insiders described as the sacred geography of the British monarchy. That phrase reportedly carried enormous significance within palace circles. It implied that ceremonial structure itself was sacred territory that could not be shaped by emotional loyalties, private influence networks, or shifting personal alliances. To William, according to those familiar with the discussions, preserving hierarchy was not cruelty, it was survival. The institution, in his view, could only endure if every royal household understood precisely where authority ultimately resided. Staff members were reportedly instructed to maintain complete silence regarding internal negotiations surrounding the procession. Even among palace aides, speculation spread carefully and in whispers, because by this point, insiders allegedly realized the ceremony had become symbolic of something much larger than one royal dispute. It represented the beginning of an institutional transition already unfolding beneath the surface, the slow movement from Charles's reign toward the future monarchy William intended to build. A monarchy defined less by emotional compromise and more by rigid control, disciplined hierarchy, and unmistakable chains of authority. Yet, even as the procession unfolded in public, another confrontation was reportedly taking place behind closed palace doors, and it left Camilla's allies deeply alarmed. As footage of the procession spread across global headlines, palace insiders claimed the real damage was happening far from the cameras. Behind closed doors at Windsor and Clarence House, alliances were allegedly collapsing, tempers were rising, and senior aides reportedly feared the monarchy had entered a dangerous new phase of internal Cold War. According to various interpretations of palace activity following the ceremony, the atmosphere inside royal residences reportedly shifted almost immediately from controlled tension to outright institutional panic. Senior aides allegedly moved between offices carrying revised briefing documents, while communication staff quietly monitored media reactions spreading across Britain and beyond. Publicly, the procession appeared restrained, dignified, even routine to some observers. But insiders whisper that within royal households, the symbolism had landed with devastating force. Because for those who understood palace hierarchy, the message was unmistakable. William had not merely adjusted ceremonial positioning. He had allegedly demonstrated that the future center of royal authority was already beginning to consolidate around him. Reports suggest Camilla's inner circle reacted with fury behind closed doors, privately viewing the procession changes as a deliberate humiliation campaign disguised beneath ceremonial tradition. Clarence House loyalists allegedly believed the reduction in visibility had been carefully calculated to weaken Camilla's standing during one of the monarchy's most sacred public rituals. According to sources familiar with internal conversations, some aides reportedly argued that lines had been crossed which could permanently damage trust between royal households. Others allegedly warned that allowing such adjustments to stand without resistance would only strengthen William's influence further. What began as whispered frustration reportedly evolved into a broader fear that the balance of power inside the monarchy was changing far faster than anyone anticipated. Royal staff allegedly became deeply concerned about leaks as tensions intensified between competing palace factions. Insiders whisper that aides loyal to different households grew increasingly suspicious of one another, with every briefing, every off-record conversation, and every revised schedule suddenly treated as politically sensitive. The fear was no longer simply embarrassment, it was exposure. Palace administrative streams reportedly suggest concerns emerged that details surrounding internal disputes would eventually reach royal correspondents already circling the story. And once those details escaped palace walls, insiders feared the institution could face a public narrative of division at precisely the moment stability mattered most. At the center of the crisis stood King Charles himself, reportedly exhausted by the growing conflict unfolding around him. Sources close to palace staff claim the king attempted repeatedly to calm tensions between both camps, urging restraint while privately navigating the emotional strain of watching competing loyalties fracture the institution he had waited his entire life to inherit. But insiders whisper that Charles increasingly appeared overwhelmed, physically weakened and emotionally burdened. He allegedly found himself trapped between devotion to Camilla and mounting pressure from the old guard surrounding William and Anne. For years, Charles had attempted to balance personal relationships with institutional expectations. Now, according to various interpretations, that balancing act was beginning to collapse under the weight of succession anxiety and internal distrust. Princess Anne reportedly refused to reverse any ceremonial adjustments because the strategy had been implemented. That refusal, insiders claim, sent shockwaves through sections of Clarence's house because Anne's position carried enormous institutional significance. She was not viewed as emotional or impulsive within palace circles. Quite the opposite. Anne represented continuity, discipline, and unwavering loyalty to what many insiders called the monarchy before the individual. Reports suggest her refusal effectively confirmed that the procession changes were not accidental improvisations, but part of a deliberate institutional calculation already supported by senior figures within the royal structure itself. Meanwhile, sources close to royal commentators described Camilla as deeply unsettled by the symbolism surrounding the ceremony, not necessarily because of any single adjustment, but because of what those adjustments appeared to reveal about the future. Discussions reportedly began emerging among palace insiders regarding possible long-term reductions in ceremonial prominence for non-core royal figures, as William continued shaping his future monarchy. The implications of those whispers were enormous, because if true, they suggested the monarchy was quietly moving toward a far stricter and narrower hierarchy than anything seen during Charles's reign. William, according to insiders, remained focused on discipline, hierarchy, and long-term institutional survival over personal sensitivities. Royal commentators increasingly whispered that this was never truly about one procession or one ceremonial dispute. It was about defining the monarchy's next era before William ever formally ascended the throne. The Order of the Garter, once celebrated as a sacred symbol of unity, had reportedly transformed into something far more unsettling, a public marker of shifting royal power and the emergence of a future reign already beginning to cast its shadow over the present. But as palace tensions reached their peak, insiders claim William delivered one final message that changed the entire meaning of the confrontation. By the end of the procession, the silence itself had reportedly become the loudest statement of all. No public explanation, no official confrontation, no dramatic announcement from Buckingham Palace. Yet, according to insiders whispering through the highest corridors of Windsor, Prince William had already achieved exactly what he intended, a visible reminder that the monarchy's future would be governed by duty, hierarchy, and unforgiving institutional control. As the final ceremonial carriages departed, and the ancient rituals of the Order of the Garter drew quietly to a close, palace commentators reportedly began realizing they had witnessed something far more consequential than a single royal disagreement. According to various interpretations spreading through royal circles, the procession had become a symbolic declaration about the monarchy's future direction under William's eventual reign. Reports suggest the Prince of Wales wanted the ceremony to communicate continuity, discipline, and unmistakable institutional stability, during a period when uncertainty surrounding King Charles's health continued casting a long shadow over the crown. To many insiders, the message was brutally clear. The future monarchy would not be shaped by divided loyalties, competing influence networks, or emotional compromises. It would be defined by structure, by hierarchy, by control. Princess Anne reportedly viewed the moment through a similarly uncompromising lens. Sources close to palace operations claimed she believed the monarchy had entered a dangerous era where institutional discipline could no longer be treated as optional. For Anne, according to royal insiders, the principle had always remained the same: the firm before the family. That philosophy reportedly shaped every decision made behind the scenes during the procession controversy. Palace whispers suggest Anne considered the ceremonial adjustments not as acts of punishment, but as necessary corrections designed to preserve clarity inside an institution already facing extraordinary pressure. To her allies within the old guard, allowing emotional sensitivities to override hierarchy would only weaken the monarchy further at the precise moment strength was required most. Palace commentators increasingly framed the entire confrontation as part of a much broader transition quietly unfolding beneath the surface of royal life. Comparisons to Queen Elizabeth II reportedly became impossible to ignore. Throughout her reign, the late Queen had maintained a famously rigid understanding of monarchy itself, one rooted in sacrifice, restraint, and the belief that personal relationships could never supersede institutional duty. According to various interpretations circulating through Windsor, William appeared to be embracing that same philosophy with growing intensity. The difference, however, was timing. Elizabeth had enforced discipline from the security of a long-established reign. William, insiders whisper, was beginning to shape the monarchy's future authority before formally inheriting the throne at all. That reality reportedly left many inside palace circles deeply unsettled. Sources whisper that Camilla's reduced ceremonial visibility may not remain an isolated incident tied only to the order of the Garter. Instead, royal insiders allegedly believe it could represent the beginning of a quieter, longer-term recalibration regarding ceremonial prominence within the monarchy's next era. Not through public humiliation, not through dramatic announcements, but through gradual institutional narrowing carried out behind closed doors. The possibility alone reportedly alarmed sections of Clarence's house loyal to Camilla, particularly those who once believed the coronation had permanently secured her central position within royal life. Meanwhile, King Charles allegedly remained emotionally torn as the fallout continued unfolding around him. Sources close to palace staff claimed the king struggled privately with the impossible tension between personal loyalty to his wife and mounting pressure from the guardians of institutional continuity surrounding William, Anne, and Edward. For Charles, the conflict reportedly carried painful emotional weight. He had spent decades fighting for personal acceptance inside an institution that often demanded sacrifice over happiness. And now, according to insiders, he found himself watching that same institution slowly tighten around the future reign his son was already beginning to define. Throughout the controversy, Catherine's silence reportedly became one of the most powerful statements of all. Palace observers claim her refusal to publicly engage strengthened perceptions of unity between the Wales household and the old guard, protecting the monarchy's future structure. She neither inflamed tensions nor distanced herself from William's actions. Instead, according to royal commentators, her silence projected steadiness, the kind of quiet discipline the institution traditionally rewards. In many ways, insiders whisper, Catherine's restraint reinforced the broader image William hoped to create: a future monarchy built around stability, continuity, and tightly controlled institutional loyalty. By this point, the Order of the Garter was no longer being remembered merely as an ancient ceremonial celebration. According to palace insiders, it had transformed into the moment royal power visibly shifted in front of the world without a single public argument ever taking place. And perhaps most significantly, insiders claim the message was never intended solely for Camilla's circle. It was directed toward every royal household, every palace aide, every competing influence structure operating within the institution itself. The warning was unmistakable. The future chain of authority was already taking shape. Because in the end, the deeper moral reportedly emerging from the crisis was larger than any individual royal figure. The crown, according to those closest to the monarchy's old institutional philosophy, is not a personal possession to be reshaped by emotion, loyalty, or ambition. It is a sacred trust carried across generations, surviving every conflict, every scandal, and every reign. Individuals rise and fall around it, but the institution endures. And according to whispers still echoing through Windsor's ancient corridors, William intended the world to understand exactly that. As Windsor returned to silence beneath the ancient stone walls of St. George's Chapel, one chilling realization reportedly remained inside palace corridors. The next reign may have already begun. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.